Hey, it's Will with Agri Drones. In this video, we're going to show you the installation process of the HD408 Auto Steering system. As you'll see in this video, we've made a couple additions since its original release, as we've done more testing with the product and learned some more information about it. Hence, you may see a few other tractors that aren't featured in the main installation portion. I also mentioned, check the link in the description below for the HD408 Knowledge Hub. It's vital that you take a look at this before you start installation to understand all of the features and different components on the tractor and this system. Once you've taken a look at this will help you a ton in the field, both with your operation and troubleshooting procedures. All right, let's get to it. Let's take a look at what's in the box. Today we're going to show you a quick overview video of how to install the HD408 Auto Steer system on this John Deere tractor. So first off, I'm going to take a quick look at what's in the box. I recommend you take a look at the unboxing video Taylor did a couple weeks ago, if you haven't already, just to kind of see what you're gonna be looking at here. This is the cable that goes from the monitor to the motor to provide the steering data. We have the mount for the monitor here, as well as the monitor itself. So you can see there's a ball mount on there. Well, this will install. We'll show you that here in a minute. Got some instructions here as well. This cord here will go to your IMU, so we'll show you how to install that on the floor of the tractor. We have your antenna here, as well as the width that'll be further down here in the box for the RTK base station system, if you choose to purchase that. And now the main event is your steering wheel and motor, which will be installed after we remove the stock steering wheel over there on the tractor. And in addition to that, you'll need one of these flanges that corresponds to your tractor and the splines on your steering shaft. So we'll show you a little look at how to put that on here in a minute. Next, you'll find the cable for your GNSS globe. So this is what will run from the monitor up to the roof of the tractor to hook that up. Right here we have an auxiliary camera. So this is a reverse camera. You can put this on the front of your tractor on an implement, something like that. And you can pull that view up on the screen to see a quick view behind you if you're trying to reverse, back up, sort of see what your implement's doing while you're operating the auto steer system. Next, you'll find the IMU. So as I mentioned, the cable for this, we'll show you how to mount this on the floor of the tractor, the direction it goes and everything. So this is how the tractor knows which direction it's heading, the slope of the ground, and interprets where it is in space and how it needs to make the turns. So on the side of the box here, you'll find the auto steer antenna, the GNSS antenna globe. So this will go on top of the roof. We'll show you exactly where that needs to go in the center of the roof here in a couple minutes when we get to that point. So next up, what you'll see here, this is the gyroscope angle sensor. So you mount this on the front axle of the tractor. So next up, what you'll find here in the box, there's two ways to mount the steering wheel motor. The one we'll be using today is these two L brackets, which can clamp on the sides of the steering column, as well as there's another model. This will mount on the bottom of the motor and then clamp around your steering column if you have a metal outer shaft. Unfortunately, this tractor doesn't, so we'll be using these two L brackets today. And as I mentioned earlier, here's the whip portion of the antenna for the RTK radio base station. We'll put that together and we'll show you where that ends up on the top of the cab. Next up in the box, you'll find hardware included with this. So there's plenty included to complete the install, both self-tapping screws. You can see here if you would like to install the mount on your dash in that way, or clamp it onto an existing accessory bar if you have it. Today we're going to be using the ball mount. I didn't pull it out. We actually already have it installed in the tractor, but I showed you the clamp and the arm, so we'll show you how that attaches later. As I mentioned, self-tapping screws as well as some Allen bolts. These Allen bolts will install the L brackets onto the motor, as well as this flange onto the bottom of the steering shaft. So now we're up here in the cab. This is a John Deere 7710, but this process might vary a little bit depending on what model and brand of tractor you have. So first off, what we're going to do is start off taking off this cap here. There's a couple nuts that we'll need to take off to complete this process. All you'll need is some basic tools for this process as well. A ratchet, couple sockets, and for this specific model, we'll need a screwdriver to pop off the locking ring that goes around the steering wheel. So first off, what I'm going to do, take this off, just the top cap on the steering wheel. Make sure you save all these pieces, that's important. So as I mentioned, on this specific steering wheel, there's a locking ring that prevents the nut from coming off. So what we're gonna have to do first is bend those tabs out so we can access the main nut. So I just used a flathead screwdriver to bend those tabs out, so that was pretty simple. Like I said, only basic tools required for this install. Next thing, you're gonna need a larger socket, and this will also be model dependent. In this case, it's a 27 millimeter to take this large nut off. So we'll come in here, pop that off. Once you have that off, make sure you save that, that's important. And then, set this aside. Your steering wheel should just slide off. And as you can see, the shaft on this one is splined. So we're going to use a flange that corresponds to that. I'll show you that here in just a second. So as I showed you earlier, here's the flange that will allow the wheel motor to interface on the steering shaft after we remove the stock steering shaft on this John Deere 7710. So for this installation, we chose the number 11 flange. It'll depend on your tractor and model. So first off, to install this, you'll need to use some Allen key bolts, and there's several different sizes included with this model. So what you're going to want to use to install the flange to the steering wheel motor is the smaller size. The larger size will be used to install the L brackets for the mount to the steering shaft, which we'll show you here in a little bit. So we'll take the flange, and you want to use the side with the collar and put that face down into the motor, just like that, with the flat side facing down where it'll go onto your steering shaft. And then we'll line this up and pop all of these bolts in. There's going to be 6 of them you'll need. And then you'll just need to grab either an Allen wrench or a impact with a hex bit on it and just tighten those down. So there you go. Now that's installed, and we're gonna head back up into the tractor and show you how to put that on the steering shaft. All right, so we're up here back in the cab of the tractor. So as you can see, we got the flange mounted here. So real quick before we install our L brackets, I'm just gonna put this on the steering shaft, make sure everything lines up. And in the case of this motor, we're gonna orient the port for the cable up here at the top to avoid the controls here on the sides. So you just need to avoid those controls and make it easy to take your cable from here over to your monitor. So next up, what we're gonna do, as I mentioned earlier, we're gonna be using these L brackets for this install. As you have 2 options, as I mentioned, there's either the option to mount it onto a outer shaft of a steering column if your tractor has that. In this case, this one does not. So we'll be using these L brackets, and how these work is they will bolt onto the bottom of the motor here and apply pressure to this outer plastic column, so the motor cannot spin when the auto steer is in operation. So if we did not have these, when the motor goes to engage to steer the tractor, this piece here would spin. We don't want that, so we need to install these 2 brackets, push against there, keep it stable, so it'll spin the steering wheel and the shaft, but not the motor. So we're going to show you how to put those on. So you'll need to take the steering wheel back off just to test fit. And as you can see here, there's several different threaded inserts here where your bolts will screw into. So we're going to be using these 4. And the way your L brackets will go on there is just, there's several different mounts and points to adjust it back and forth, but they'll line up in these holes in the slots, so you can slide it back and forth to adjust it depending on the size of your steering column and how tight it needs to be. And for this install portion, we'll be using a bolt as well as a washer. That just gives it a little bit more stability, spreads the force out over a larger area. And also, if you have to mount it in between some of these slots, can make it a little bit more stable there. And then we'll tighten all this up once it's on the steering column and we can push everything forward. So then we're going to take our whole motor, we're going to go back over here, stick it onto the steering shaft, get all that lined up. And as you can see, the way we have these oriented now, there's several different ways you can do this. It just has to be in an orientation where they're opposite and it will lock the motor from spinning. So we're going to have to do a little tightening up here, but those will slide in like that. We'll tighten up those Allen key bolts, And then as you can see, once we do that, the motor won't be able to spin. So the L brackets for this install, I actually bent them a little bit just by hand so they would attach to the steering column more firmly. So as you can see, they'll usually be at a 90-degree angle. I just took them by hand, bent them in a little bit. And what that does is allows it to firmly attach to that steering column so this motor doesn't spin. So next up, you'll take your Allen key, or you could use your impact with a hex bit, and you're gonna come down here, and this will vary by tractor as well. This one, it's pretty difficult to get everything lined up just the way the steering column is. You tighten these up, just snug them up. Be sure not to over tighten them, especially if you use an impact, as those mounts on the bottom are threaded. So you just come in here, tighten those up, and then we'll go around the other side and just repeat the same process, and I'll come back with you when it's tight. Now that we've got all the motor components securely mounted, we're going to take our nut from the original steering wheel that we used, and we're going to reinstall that on the steering shaft. Now I will note for this, you will have to use a thin-walled socket. There's not too much clearance between the motor and where the nut goes in, at least on this model. So that is worth noting. You may want to find a thin-walled socket that fits on your steering shaft nut. In this case, like I said, it's 27 millimeter, but that will depend on which tractor model you have. So I'll grab my socket and my ratchet. We'll tighten that down. Then we'll just grab our cover from back here. Once we have that all tightened down, pop that on, and now the motor is mounted. Quick addition we're going to make to this video. As you can see, I'm in an entirely different tractor here, but it's worth mentioning when you go to install the steering wheel, you may find that the socket you need to install your nut back onto your steering shaft, your socket won't fit through this hole in the steering wheel, or it might be very tight, as you can see here. So in the event that that happens, what you want to do is just remove the Allen key bolts from around the top of the steering wheel, and then you can take the steering wheel off, and then your socket will fit down into the motor perfectly fine, so you can tighten that up securely for operation. So we've got our motor and everything on. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go over which cables attach to which ports on the back of the monitor here. So first up, your radio cable. So that goes to this antenna here. So this will just screw right onto the radio port there. And like I said, you'll attach this antenna onto the top of this base here. And we'll show you how to mount that on the top of the tractor, as well as the globe here for the GPS in just a second. Set that aside. Going down, so camera 1, that's where you'll attach your backup camera. We showed that a little bit earlier. I've got that just down here. Same way as this. You'll just pop it on, screw it in there, and then you can run that back out, put it on the back of the cab of your tractor, onto your implement, on the front, wherever you'd like it, for better visibility there. So next port over here to your right is the CAN port. So what this one is, if you purchase the optional remote, that's where you'll install that. And what that'll allow you to do is activate and deactivate auto steer, as well as run your auto U-turn and program your A and B points. So the next one over past that is your IMU. So that will be this cable right here, one of these skinnier cables that doesn't have the braiding on it. So your IMU cable, they're all labeled here. So same as the CAN mount and all of the others, same screw port. So you'll go in here, there's a little tab here, line that up, mount that on, and then the other end of this, you will plug into your IMU, and we're going to show you in just a second where to mount that in the cab as well. So next up is the valve port here. So what that does is allows you to have a isobus interface with a pre-existing steering valve within your tractor. That's an optional feature coming soon, so don't worry about that for this install. The next port over is the motor port. So you will grab your thick braided cable here. That'll mount onto that port, and where this is going to go is directly from the monitor, which will be mounted over here on the side of the cab, over to our motor, the port I showed you earlier, which is right here on the bottom of the steering wheel. Finally, we're going to have the power port. So this is your main cable that you will take from your battery. Down here on the side of your tractor, you'll plug that in, and this cable includes the connector for the back of the monitor, as well as your terminal connectors, and the connector for the optional gyro sensor for the front axle if you choose to install that. And finally, up here in the top right corner, you'll see the GNSS ports. For this install, here with this globe, singular globe, you'll only want to use GNSS 1, so only plug your cord here another sleek cord without any braided protection. Plug that into the top right port here, and we'll run all of these out the back of the cab and up onto the roof for the GNSS globe. So now that you've got all your cables together, I'm going to show you how to connect the motor power wire to the back of the monitor, and this same process will serve for all of the cables. So what you're going to do, you find the correct port, and you can see how this cable has several slots, and it's also slotted as well here on the back port. So this is pretty self-explanatory. You can only put it in one way. So you're just going to take it, line up that top notch there. I have to do a little bit of twisting to get it all lined up. Give it a little push, and then you're just going to lock it down there with the nut. Then what you're going to do, take that, take the other end, and we're going to run this around later, but for demonstration purposes, come around here, and you'll line this up with the port on the back of the motor. You'll line this up with the port on the back of the motor, line that up there, same deal, just press it in, and we'll tighten down that nut, snug it up there, and now that's mounted. And this cable will just run right back here past your steering wheel, and you will have some extra, especially if you mount your monitor over here on this side. So just coil that up, take a zip tie or some sort of cable organizer, and you can just tie that up either behind here, on the floor, wherever you choose. So once you have all your cables attached to the back of your monitor, I'm just going to demonstrate with this radio cable here. This will also apply to the antenna cable, as well as the power cable will all need to be run out the back of the tractor, or if you have an open tractor, run back and around so you can properly position your antennas on the roof. So on this John Deere 7710, we have a conveniently placed grommet here. For this install, I'm not going to punch a hole in this, but I would recommend doing so for a proper seal if this is on your tractor, but we're just going to pop this out. Most enclosed cab tractors should have a feature like this, and then we'll just take our wires that run around the side of the controls over here in the cab and out the back. And this will apply to our radio cable, as well as cables like our power cable, like I mentioned. So we can take all of those and run them out the back. So next, to follow up after you've connected your motor to the back of the monitor, another important piece that's worth mentioning here in the cab is the IMU and where that gets mounted. So it's very important where you mount this in the cab. It needs to be on a flat surface, i.e. the floor here in this cab. And as you can see here, there's an arrow pointing the heading direction. So when you install this, what you'll do, and we'll show this in just a second, you're going to screw it onto the floor. When you do so, you want to make sure this is parallel to the front of the tractor. So it's got to be pointing directly forward to where the tractor is facing. And this is how the computer will know the heading of the tractor, and if this is incorrect, the tractor will not be able to drive straight lines when auto steering. So where this will be installed after we hook up this wire here in just a second. So in order to hook this up, what you're going to do is take the IMU cable, and pretty much same as the motor, you're just going to take it, line it up, make sure all the slots are lined up. You might have to do a little twisting, give it a little push, screw the nut in there until it's tight, and you're going to do the same on the back of the monitor. So find your port there, make sure it's all lined up, get the slot in place, give it a little push, make sure it's all the way in there, screw the nut on, and then this will be mounted over here in the corner. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about where the IMU needs to be mounted now that we've discussed its purpose and the direction it needs to be mounted in. So it'll be pointed towards the front of the tractor. So this part, the port where the wire comes out, will be pointing towards your hood, out the front of your tractor directly straight. So in the case of this tractor, what we would do is take your self-tapping screws or adhesive, however you would like to mount this on your floor of your tractor. You'll take it and put it on the right side, front corner. In this case, it'll be right under a monitor. So it'll set the monitor aside here, and our IMU, in this case, do the best you can, jump out, look at it. We'll mount it right there on the floor, screw it into the floor, and it'll be pointing directly towards the front tires, out the front of the hood. so we have that straight direction when we're trying to get our straight lines when auto steering. When installing the vehicle body attitude sensor, or IMU as we like to call it, it's extremely important to mount the IMU directly to the metal floor of the tractor cab, or if you have an open tractor, directly to the floor. You should not mount the IMU to any sort of rubber floor mat, carpet floor mat, anything that could cause vibration. This is extremely important for the accuracy of the machine during operation. So coming around back here, once you have all of your wires out the back of the cab through the grommet, first thing we're going to do is discuss where to mount the antenna for the RTK if you're using a base station. So the way this needs to be mounted is on the same plane as the rest of the tractor, so flat with the plane of the floor, so facing upwards towards the sky. You don't want it to be 45 degrees, 90 degrees, or upside down. It needs to be pointing straight up. So what we're going to do in the case of this tractor is mount it back here on this fender. So I will peel off some of the 3M tape here, and we're going to stick it up there on the fender. Stick it right up there, and for a permanent installation, it sometimes helps to heat up that tape a little bit before you stick it on there. For the purposes of this demo, that'll give you a good idea on where to put it, and will function for this. Next up, you got your cable coming out for your GNSS globe, which I've got right here. So the way you want to mount that, this is the end of your cable that you strung out the back of the tractor. You're going to take that, connect it to the port on the bottom of the globe, and then you'll just screw that in just like that. And then you're going to take that, run that up, and that's going to be mounted on the roof of the tractor. Now, as you can see, Ryan's taking care of that. The thing to note there, it's very important that that antenna globe is mounted directly in the center of the tractor between the wheels. So directly above the cab in the center of the tractor widthwise. Lengthwise doesn't matter as much. You will compensate for that later on in the calibration stage, but it needs to be directly in the center of the tractor, in the center of the cab. And that's important so the auto steer knows where the center of the tractor is, so you can make straight lines with no offset. Obviously there's some slack here we'll take care of, and you'll route your wires in a way that goes across the cab, hides it up there, and some sticky mounts are also provided with the auto steer system. So if you wanted to run it up the side of your window, get some zip ties, you put those 3M sticky mounts on, put some zip ties around them, and you can run the cable cleanly up to the top of your roof. So once your GNSS antenna is installed on top of the cab, the last cord you'll have is your power wire, as well as your gyro. Like I said, we won't be installing the gyro today, so we're just going to keep that together. We'll keep this cord together. I'm actually going to remove the rest of this lead for right now. So the way we'll do this, I'm going to take it, I'm going to route it down the side of the tractor up towards the battery box. The battery box is right up there, located right up there. It's under the black cover. So I'm going to run this back through here, and then we'll hook up to the battery. While we didn't install the gyroscopic angle sensor in the main portion of this video, I highly recommend installing this component for the accuracy of your steering, especially if you plan to use the auto U-turn feature or manual U-turn feature with the system. We'll put a few pictures up on screen of how to install this on the steering knuckle of the tractor, and this is absolutely necessary if you plan on doing any sort of operation that exceeds 6 miles per hour. So from the back, you'll want to run your power cable up under the cab. Make sure you avoid all mechanical moving parts, linkages, things like that could cut your wire. And then we'll come over here. This is where the battery box is located on this tractor, so I'm going to set my wires down as well as my ratchet. We're going to pull off this cover. The location of the battery will vary based on your tractor as well, so it may not be in this exact location. So just check your manual. You can also just do a quick Google and find that as well. For the purposes of a permanent install, you'll want to run this, continue running this up under the cab, out through somewhere over here and connect to the battery. For the purposes of our testing today, we're going to just run up under here, and I'm going to show you how to connect to the battery. So you have your two terminals here, so what we're going to do is just connect negative and positive. Here, obviously, put the terminals on there, and that'll provide power up into the cab for the monitor. So now that we've got that attached to our battery terminals, we checked for power in the cab, connected the power up to the monitor. We're gonna put this cover back on. We're gonna head back into the cab, plug in all the other accessories, and then test it out, make sure everything works. Now that we have all of our cables connected and our monitor mounted in the cab where we want it, we're gonna test it, make sure everything works. Now that you have the system installed on your tractor, there's one more important piece of the puzzle to make sure your system is ready for operation, and that is submitting your QR code and registering it for warranty via the customer onboarding form. So first step, what you want to do, connect your HD408 display to the internet via the Wi-Fi button in the upper left-hand corner. You can do this by connecting to a hotspot or inserting a SIM card. Next, go down to the orange help button in the bottom left-hand corner, click installation and registration, and you'll see a QR code appear on the screen. Take a picture of that QR code and you'll need to submit that as part of your information on the customer onboarding form. The customer onboarding form will also ask you to submit the serial number, which is located under the steering wheel cover on a small silver tab, as well as some other installation information, including the number of the flange you used during your installation. Make sure you submit all of that successfully, and once you do that, you're ready to start operating in the field with your HD408 Auto Steering system. Thanks for watching.